Good morning, good morning, good morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spilling Tea. I'm your host, Tiffany Daniels. And yes, this morning we're going back to that horrible world known as the JRC. But before we do the usual disclaimers and my usual complaints, I have not had enough caffeine yet. I am not awake, folks. Not even a little bit. I got sun shining and freaking temperature spike from hell, and welcome to Missouri, right? Alright, folks. Now, we are going back to that horrible world known as the JRC, and you're going to find a link to the article right there at the description box, alongside the other pertinent links to the Stop the Shocks campaign. I'm going to give a little bit more explanation for this for all those who just recently started following me for the JD versus AH case. This one is also extremely important, folks. So, as far as Stop the Shocks go and what it's all about, I highly recommend you go to the link that's in the description box. It's from Autistic Hoya, aka Lydia Brown. Our evidence is insane about what the Judge Rotenberg Center does to these kids. You're going to find it shocking, disturbing, and trigger warnings in advance. We also have the compilation video that was put together by former JRC employee Greg Miller. If you want to get a basic background of what all of this is about, please click on that particular video. We also include tin plates. These are letters that was created by ASAN, or the Autism Self-Advocacy Network, where all you have to do is literally sign your name and click on the senator in your area. We have this fight coming up for us in May. For the love of God, folks, please visit that link. We also have the ever-present and self-explanatory change.org Shut the Judge Rotenberg Center Down petition. If you look at the other links, you'll understand why that change.org link is there. And folks, especially you new ones, when we talk about the JRC, you're going to hear vivid descriptions of and catch clips of surveillance footage of peoples with disabilities, yes, being tortured and abused. We're talking skin shocks designed to be painful by the man who invented the device himself, Dr. Matthew Israel, may he rot in hell. You're going to also hear of food deprivation and sleep deprivation, of people being restrained and helpless on 4-point boards where they're either shocked or forcibly stripped and braved, where other people can watch them through live monitors. So, for the love of God, folks, if you got young children present, please use your headphones. It is not for kids, all right? Now, my autistic ass tends to stumble over my words, particularly when I get upset, scattered brained, autistic cloud brain, or just overtired. So my apologies for any of that in advance, all right? What we're taking a look at now, for those who are new, it's called the Socio-Spatial Analysis of the Judge Rotenberg Center. Please go to the first video on this if you want to know what the hell we're talking about, okay? Okay, now to where we left off yesterday. Dunlap, 1996, continues to explain that the one aspect of Disney Parks' control of guest behavior is through the maintenance of a highly groomed, immaculately clean environment. This is achieved through highly successful attempts to evoke a sense of visual harmony and psychological order within the space of the parks. This includes overt acts of behavioral control, such as banning shirtless or shoeless visitors, as well as the prohibition of littering, which are expressed to visitors through signage, but also through more covert methods of behavioral control. Dunlop argues that it is highly controlled environment, not simply the fantastical design of the space, that sets Disneyland apart from other amusement parks like Coney Island or Six Flags. Dunlap writes, everything about the park, including the behavior of the guests, is engineered to promote a spirit of optimism, a belief in progressive improvement towards perfection. God, if that doesn't disturb the hell out of me. A particularly telling uploaded image from the JRC website Yukio Strachan 2012 is described by Strachan 2012 thusly. At the end of the Yellow Brick Road, the Wizard of Oz movie is projected on the wall and plays in a continuous loop as the Wicked Witch looks on from her niche on the left. Okay, it's like just when I think this place can't possibly get more psychotic, it does. Woo! God, what is wrong with these people? This is an apt description of the image which I have selected to focus on in particular because it reveals not only the themed nature of the JRC, but also because it captures the cyclical, timeless nature of the JRC's programming. I wouldn't call it programming, I call it torture, but anytime I hear the word programming, not program, but programming, and there's a distinct difference, folks. Remember, I worked in a field. Program, on one hand, is kind of like person-centered planning. It's particularly geared with input from the person with actual disabilities to help assist in areas where we're lacking, right? Help us improve if we can. Provide reasonable accommodations where we cannot, reasonably, logically, right? Programming, and why I feel like it has sinister connotations, is about, it's almost like brainwashing, making you repeat shit. Basically trying to force you to conform to their romanticized idea of normal, which again, as we've said time and again, does not actually exist in the real world. Trying to force you to become something other than what you are. Bleh. Moving on. Even upon reaching the end of the Yellow Brick Road and entering the Emerald City by displaying normative behaviors and refraining from aggression, noncompliance, and self-injury, students emerge from the Emerald City only to be subjected once again to the endless cycle of regaining entry into the rewards area. Can I say this again? This is like the definition of psychosis. You know what I mean? This constant never-ending loop. And if it's a never-ending loop, there's no progress being made. If everything keeps being the same, where is room left for growth or development? There's not. So their so-called ideals and philosophies fall flat on its face just from reading the so-called theories. If you are not able to adjust and change a program, it is no longer a program. It is programming. You see where the difference is again there? In a program, as a milestone is reached or an area has been improved upon, that program then progresses and adapts to then work on the other areas where we might still be lacking in, or provide reasonable accommodations for those areas if need be. Programming keeps you on an endless loop forever. It's freaking horrifying. So, moving on. So this is the reason why, so I gotta stop. that I don't believe the JRC and their mantra, because there is no room for progress. There is no adaptation or changing of the so-called program when a milestone has been reached, or to quote them, a behavior has disappeared. It stays the same. So it leaves no real room for development or preparing these kids for the real world. So what does this tell us? They don't want these kids to progress. In fact, they don't think that we can. So instead, they're going to make off all the money that they can off our backs while torturing us and paying their employees diddly shit. Okay, moving on. Even every display of natural, neurodivergent ways of being in the world, stimming, asking questions, challenging authority figures, reacting strongly to staff control, etc. Oh geez, that was me. I would have never left the 4-point board. I curse like a fucking sailor. I don't give a shit. I'm going to ask my goddamn questions. I'm going to challenge authority figures when they don't make any coherent sense. They're basically being compliant, good little disabled people behind closed doors who don't complain about their lot. They don't provide these kids with any means to make their state in life better, and that's what school is supposed to be about. Because they don't think we can be better. They don't think we're people at all. And if you don't believe me, read what the founder of ABA said about us. Google it. Anyway, moving on. And if you act like yourself, if you refuse to wear the mask, if you challenge authority, if you call them out on their shit, if you ask relevant, logical questions, you lose your privileges. Remember, they consider eating a privilege. They consider sleep a privilege. And they will shock and torture you and put you on the 4-point board. Moving on, that require the child or young adult to begin again down the yellow brick road. It's an endless cycle of fucking misery. Ahmed 2006 argues that disorientation occurs when we fail to sink into the ground, which means that the ground itself is disturbed, which also disturbs what gathers on the ground. Similarly to Lucas, Ahmed 2006 here makes the point that we can't fail to acknowledge the spaces we occupy are never impartial, and that the spaces in which the marginalized groups, queer, disabled, racialized people, are forcibly contained can be frightening and violent sites of trauma where it is impossible to feel grounded or to take up space. This in turn results in a disturbance of what gathers on the ground. In the case of the uneven power relationships between the JRC director, staff, child, and youth inmates, the families of those interned there, and the wider communities surrounding the site. This disturbance can be felt not just at the site itself, but also in other states and countries where protests are being held to shut the JRC down. The disturbance described by Ahmed could, I argue, refer to Foucault's description of power relations and can be seen both on the localized and more broadly felt. So this is what we are talking about, folks, and please ignore my phone. That is Miss Chloe calling. But anyways, what I'm trying to get to here, you see what I mean. Those of us who've been fighting these bastards for years, they don't just oppress the people in the building, but us as well, using terms as disturbed. I bet they wish we were underneath their roof. They don't believe autistics like us even should exist, who have the capacity, the ability, the willpower, and actually do speak out against their insanity. They try to discredit us using our diagnosis to do it. And the media buys it every fucking time. You see what I mean? And their way of thinking is not so alien to the rest of the world who likes to tout themselves as better than the JRC. Because ultimately, they're not. Not really. They may not use the extremes that the JRC does. But by and large, a good majority of the people who go with the traditional medical model do believe that we're toxic, deviant, must be controlled. And those of us who refuse, like myself, to be controlled, to question, to challenge authority figures, oh, they'll do everything to discredit us. That's why it's important to have outside allies outside of the autistic and neurodiverse and disability communities. You see what I mean? They can't say we're all disturbed. Not in the people actually buy it. And on that, folks, I'm going to close out for this morning. We don't get very many views on this channel. And a few that we do tend to get removed from time to time. So folks, please don't forget to hit that like button. Hit subscribe. Don't forget to hit the comments. Do appreciate your time this morning. As always, we here at Smelling Tea hope you have a good one. Bye-bye.